Dollar. Dirt on money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. We have top 3 disturbing missing person cases by the boy, Mr. Ballen. Some of y'all favorite. I done found some other storytellers. You know what I'm saying? Crime storytellers on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, we do the Nick, is it Nick Crawley now? Mm-hmm. And then we do, is it Chilling Scares? But I'm trying to, like, find other people that do other cases that we might not have heard about before. But that's to come. It won't happen right away, but that's to come because we cooking up some stuff for y'all, man. So I'm trying to go ahead and get prepared for that. You know?
Country.
Trying to get prepared.
And get prepared, yeah.
So with that being said, before we get into it, make sure you check out the links in the description box.
It's down below.
You already know where to go, man. You want the first part? All you have to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's visuals,
lock it in with a thumbs up.
It ain't that funny, man. Like you having a ball like you.
Oh man. Okay, come on.
Oh Lord. Y'all bear with me and bear with her as well as we try to proceed.
Proceed.
To give y'all what y'all need. Hold on.
Yeah.
No, I never mind. Because you know who said that? I'm saying, do you know who's?
Oh.
No, we ain't. Not him.
I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about another song.
He does the intro. He does.
Is that him? Oh, for real? That's crazy.
Let's go. Let's check it out. Let's see what's about. Y'all ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Today, I'm going to share 3 progressively more bizarre missing person cases. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please tuck the like button into their bed and read them a bedtime story, and then when they ask you for a glass of water, say, no problem, go get them a cup of water, and then when you come back, dump it on their stupid face. Also, please subscribe to our channel.
So mean.
Why you gotta be stupid? There's some stuff out.
Yeah, that's...
Ooh, never mind. I'm cooking us some stuff up here.
Oh, baby. Not too much.
I'm cooking us some stuff. You might wake up one morning.
And turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. On the evening of June 28, 1997, an 83-year-old woman named Leila Howard turned up the radio in the living room of her small home in Texas, and then she took a seat next to her husband, Raymond, on the couch. This was a song that both of them loved, and in the past, Leila knew her husband would have swooped her up and begun dancing with her right away. But Raymond was now 88 years old, he was also recovering from brain surgery, and they both were planning to go to bed in the next few minutes because they had a big day the next day. They were going to go to the Pioneer Day Music Festival, which is an annual fiddling festival located about 15 miles away from where Leila and Raymond lived, in the town of Salado, Texas. Leila and Raymond attended this festival basically every year, and so even though Raymond right now was a bit fragile from his surgery and his advanced age, the couple had not even considered missing it. Leila's son, Hal, had tried to persuade Leila to let him, Hal, drive the couple to the music festival, but Leila said no because Leila and Raymond were both fiercely independent and wanted to be in control of their lives, which included driving to and from this festival. Also, Leila had talked about maybe going someplace else after the festival ended with Raymond, kind of spontaneously just driving out and doing something, and so she really wanted to have her own car in case she did want to do that. And so after a few minutes, Leila and Raymond's favorite song came to an end, and the DJ hopped back on the radio and began talking about the weather and the traffic. And at that point, Raymond and Leila, they stood up from the couch, they took each other's hands, and they walked upstairs to go to bed. The next morning, so June 29th, Leila and Raymond walked out the front door of their house, and they walked down to their driveway where their Oldsmobile car was parked. Leela helped Raymond get into the passenger seat, and then Leela took her spot in the driver's seat. And then a few moments later, after they were all buckled in and situated, Leela fired up the car, backed out the driveway, and began driving. That evening, Leela's son, Hal, decided to swing by Leela and Raymond's house to check in on them and see how the festival went. And so at about 5 p.m., Hal got to their house, and right away when he pulled up, he noticed that Leela and Raymond's car, the Oldsmobile, was not in the driveway. And so Hal thought that was pretty odd, because by now they should have been back from the festival. In years past, they would always get home by about 3 p.m. at the absolute latest, because they didn't like staying out late, and so it just seemed odd that they were not back by now. But at the same time, Hal knew that Leela had been thinking about maybe going out and doing something spontaneous after the event was over. And so he thought, maybe his mom and Raymond were out driving around somewhere and they'd be back later. But just for good measure, Hal did park the car and he walked up to the front door of the house and he did knock. But when there was no answer, he thought, you know what, I'll just go home and come back in a few hours and check in on them at that point. And so, a few hours later, at 8 p.m., Hal drove back to Leela and Raymond's house, and when he got there, he saw their car was still not back yet. And so now Hal's starting to feel pretty worried, and so he parked the car, he walked up to the front door, he did knock, there was no answer, and so he pulled out his set of keys, he opened up the door, and he walked inside. Now, as soon as he was in the house, nothing looked out of place.
He didn't go in the house first.
Not the first time. He just knocked it. And it's like, okay, they're not here. The car not here. I'll come back later. But
Would you do that? I'm just asking you real quick. Would you do that?
Would I do what?
Every time I go to my mama's house, even if I know she ain't there, well, I ain't gonna say every time.
I think
I ain't gonna say every time.
Oh.
Because sometimes I will just, she ain't at the house and keep going.
Yeah.
And I go over like my sister's house.
Yeah.
And then if I go to my sister's house, she ain't there. And then I'm like, all right, I just pulled, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I want to, I pop up. Because also they got the right to their own privacy.
Yeah,
too,
and sometimes when we pop up, the car not there, she not at home. And then we'll go somewhere else.
Yeah. And then when my dad did stay in town, I go over here. If my sister ain't there, I go to my dad's house and call him and be like, hey, you at the crib here? Then later on, I'll go easy. So, yeah.
Opened up the door and he walked inside. Now, as soon as he was in the house, nothing looked out of place. It actually looked very organized and clean like it normally was. But as he walked around looking for some sign of where Leela and Raymond were, all he could find was on one of the beds, there were all these neat stacks of clothes that were laid out as if somebody was getting ready to pack but didn't finish packing. And so it just seemed like something's off here, something's not right. This doesn't seem like they just went out and did something spontaneous. Something must have happened at the festival. That's why they're not back yet. And so kind of in a panic, Hal ran outside and he called the police. And after reporting Leela and Raymond missing, he actually began calling news stations and telling them, can you please put out my mom and Raymond's picture because they're older and they're missing. I need your help. And in fact, that night, those TV stations did begin putting out all these reports about how Leela and Raymond were missing and for people to be on the lookout for them and their car. At the same time, the police immediately launched an investigation, and they quickly discovered that Leela and Raymond had never even made it to the music festival. They never got there. And then when the police drove the route that Leela would have taken to get to the music festival, they didn't find any car accidents or anything unusual on the route that would indicate that they got into some trouble or something. They checked their phone records, and Leela and Raymond had called nobody. There was no action on their credit cards, and so they hadn't bought anything. And the police would send out all these missing person reports to police officers all over the state of Texas, and nobody reported seeing anything or hearing anything. That is, until 3 days later on July 2nd. On that night, a police officer in a little town in Arkansas, located 500 miles away from where Leela and Raymond lived, this police officer was driving down the road when he spotted an Oldsmobile that was driving with its lights off. And so the officer pulled the car over and he ran the license plate, and it came back as belonging to Leela and Raymond. But you got to remember that this police officer was in Arkansas, and so he had not received any updates about this missing couple. All those TV broadcasts and all the missing person alerts that were getting sent out all over the place, those were really only happening in the state of Texas. And so this officer has no clue that Leela and Raymond are missing. But he runs the plate, he sees it belongs to Leela and Raymond, and he goes up to the driver's side window, and he looks inside, and he sees Leela and Raymond. Leela's driving, Raymond's in the passenger seat, and they look like a really happy older couple. And the officer would say to Leela, hey, you're driving with your lights off. And Leela would say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. You know, we were driving in Texas, and we got lost, and I just didn't notice. I'm really sorry. The officer believed her and felt like these were good people who just made an honest mistake, and so he just flicked her lights on and said, I'm going to give you a warning, no big deal, no ticket, but be careful with your lights. You got to make sure those are on at night. And Leela said, thank you very much. You know, of course, I'll be very careful with my lights. And then actually the officer gave Leela directions on how to get back to Texas from Arkansas, and then he got back in his cruiser, and then he watched as Leela and Raymond pulled onto the main road and then disappeared into the darkness. The police officer in Arkansas who pulled them over would eventually put it together who he had pulled over, and at that point, Arkansas would get in on the search for Leela and Raymond. But for the next 2 weeks, despite having both states aggressively searching for this couple, nobody could find them. That is until July 12th, so that's 10 days after Leela and Raymond got pulled over by that cop in Arkansas. On that day, these two young boys were walking by a small stream in a town called Hot Springs, Arkansas, when they began to smell a terrible smell. They would end up telling their parents, who would come back to the stream and they'd smell it too, and they would end up alerting the police, and the police would come out and they would search that entire area, and they would find Leela and Raymond's Oldsmobile at the base of a 25-foot cliff, and inside the vehicle were Leela and Raymond, and they were both deceased. It looked very much like Leela and Raymond had driven off this cliff and they had landed down below, and that's what killed them. But when investigators went up to the top of that cliff, there were no skid marks on the cliff itself, which meant Leela, who was driving, never hit the brakes as she went over the cliff. Nobody knows why Leela and Raymond abruptly left their town and drove hundreds of miles into Arkansas instead of going to their favorite music festival, although their family members have speculated that it could be because Leela and Raymond had declining cognitive function, and so they basically didn't know what was going on, and that's why it happened. But the reason this story is in this video is because this story about Leela and Raymond is what inspired a very, very famous song from the late 1990s. It's called The Way by Fastball, and for copyright reasons, we can't play it for you, but I'll sing you a line and see if you can remember this song. Where were they going without ever knowing the way? Anyone can see the road that they walk on is paved in gold. It's always summer, you'll never get cold. You'll never be hungry, you'll never be old and gray. Boom, there you go. If you know the song, now you know it's got a pretty intense backstory.
So let me say this.
Dang.
He always get up around this time. Hey. No. But it's a possibility because they said they had a surprise. And then it's like they tidied up the place before they left. Maybe it was a possibility this was what they wanted to do. They wanted to go out on their own reconnaissance. He was 88. They didn't say how old she was. Maybe he had felt ill. We don't know this information. I'm just at this point speculating as a possibility, but maybe he was ill to a point or she was ill to a point that nobody knew. Because sometimes older people, sometimes they don't want their family to stress.
Know and stress and worry.
Yes.
And stuff like that.
So they try to keep certain things secretive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a possibility that was like, hey, I don't want to live without you. Let's just decide this to go out together.
Yeah. I mean,
because going up, my bad.
No, you good. Go ahead.
No, go.
No, I was going to say, at one point I kind of thought that, but then I was like, no, like, why would you do that? You know, why would someone? And then I was like, well, then again, they are older. But then I thought also, well, maybe it's just like, they wasn't thinking or, you know, fully understand what was going on or didn't realize that where they was, because she said that they were lost or she had got lost. But I was like, well, maybe did she really get lost or she just,
it could have been an excuse to say,
yeah,
we don't want you to.
But with this, like you said, it's just speculations. You don't know. It could have honestly just been
a pact they came together.
Well, no, I was about to say that, or it could have honestly just been an accident. Don't know. And she probably thought she was.
The only reason why... I'm like on the accident, because like the detective said, there was no skid marks. So,
but that's what I'm saying. Maybe she didn't even. Maybe they thought that she was going into like a.
Because at one point I thought they had when they was trying to do it because Hot Springs, Arkansas. I know a lot of people go there for the springs and stuff, and I'm like, are we talking about they got like something with the springs and
yeah? At first, for a second, I thought that as well.
Because have you ever been to Hot Springs? I haven't. I know my family have though, but I haven't. But I'm just like. It's just very alarming, and because I'm wondering like how far from the border were they? Border Arkansas, like Arkansas, like if you go, because typically most people go through Texarkana, like to go through. That's how when we went to Texas, we went Arkansas, Texarkana, and went that way. So I'm like, is it close enough where like y'all do they typically go to Arkansas or something?
Right, because now I'm thinking what you said. I'm like. What would make them like? Well, if you're going off of what you're thinking, what would make them go to Arkansas to do it?
It's a possibility.
To do whatever you're thinking.
Something. What background do they possibly have with Arkansas? True. Are they somebody originally from Arkansas? Yeah. Did they have a special trip there before? Did they meet there before?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
That's a big possibility. I know it's a horrible thing to think about, but it's a possibility.
Especially since they never even made it to the festival, and it's not like they don't know where it's at because they go every year. And
they refused their son to go with them or drive them.
They wanted to. Yeah, you never know.
Especially getting older in age. Typically, older people like, yeah, you can take us.
Yeah, you honestly.
And typically, a lot of older people, when they know they're about to pass, they like to tidy up their place. Like a lot of people, I've heard stories of people being like, she passed, but the home was neat, clothes were folded. Yeah. Because older people never leave the house without the house being straightened up. Like just in case something happened to you, you don't want to leave that last impression of stuff being dirty. You want your house to always be neat. So.
If we're going off of that, then regardless of the fact if it is something like that or if it was just simply an accident and they really just didn't know or understand it's nighttime, if it did happen at nighttime, then it's super sad because they found the car during the day, but... Because
obviously they spent weeks together just riding.
Right.
You don't, see...
yeah.
And to get to from Texas Texas to Hot Springs, that's the reason I was like, what was this? Do you remember this?
28th and then
I know I'm digging too.
Was this when the cop pulled him over? The 2nd of July?
Yeah.
So
that's 3 days later.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that they spent weeks driving. It's just the car wasn't found until 2 weeks later.
But it doesn't take that long to get from Texas to Arkansas.
Yeah, I definitely get that.
Takes less than a day.
Yeah, I definitely get that. But with this, you just really would never know.
3 days, that means that they would stop somewhere. They enjoy spending time together. They, whatever. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I get you. I definitely get what you're saying.
I don't know. That's just where my head
Especially with driving with the lights off. Because, like, especially being older, I'm not supposed to. I know you can.
And you know the functionality.
You can't see good.
True. And so they both wear glasses.
Yeah, okay. But it's sad.
Late one afternoon in April of 2019, a middle-aged woman named Mary was cutting up some vegetables in her kitchen in northern Spain when she heard a knock on her front door. So she put her things down, she went to the door, opened it up, and standing there was her next-door neighbor, who was all smiles, and she was holding this big box that was wrapped in wrapping paper and had a big bow on it, and then sitting on top of this big gift was a tray of deep-fried rolls, or croquettes. Mary's neighbor was a 61-year-old woman named Carmen Marino, who was an exceptional chef, and her specialty were making these croquettes. They were filled with different types of meat and other things, and all the time, Carmen would come over and give them to Mary, and Mary loved these croquettes. And so as soon as she saw those, she was like, wow, amazing, and she invited Carmen inside. But Carmen didn't come inside. Instead, she took the croquettes and handed them to Mary, and Mary's like, okay, great, thank you. But Carmen was still standing right outside holding this box, and now Mary's looking at her thinking that Carmen looks kind of uneasy. And so Mary said, what's going on here? What's up with this box? Carmen was silent for a second and just kind of held this box out, at which point Mary realized, okay, so she's trying to give me this gift. And so Mary reached out and took this huge present, and she was like, thank you, Carmen. Like, what is this? What's going on? And Mary, when she looked at Carmen, she could tell Carmen's face was now bright red. She was very embarrassed about something, maybe whatever she was going to say. And so Mary just waited for Carmen to speak. And so eventually Carmen she would clear her voice, and then she would say, Mary, this is really embarrassing, but I need you to hold on to this box for a little bit. It contains my sex toys, and I'm having company over at my house, and I'm just worried that somehow they're going to find these things. Mary was so caught off guard by what Carmen was telling her that she just started laughing. But Carmen didn't join in on the laughter. She just kind of looked down like she was totally mortified. Mary stopped laughing because she felt bad, and then Carmen kind of elaborated on why she had this huge box full of sex toys. She would tell Mary that, she bought them with the intent of using them with her boyfriend, but a couple of months ago he had broken up with her. But Carmen had held on to these in the hopes that the boyfriend would eventually take her back and they would get back together again and get to use these toys. And so even though this was a totally weird and kind of uncomfortable request, Mary kind of felt bad for Carmen. One, because she had to make this request of Mary, but also two, it was obvious that Carmen was pretty shaken up about, losing her boyfriend. And so Mary said, you know what? No problem, Carmen. I will look after your sex toys and I will enjoy your croquettes. And Carmen was so relieved and said, thank you so much. And then she turned and hustled back to her house. And then Mary shut the door and she brought the croquettes into the kitchen and she tried.
Would you open the box?
No. No.
You want to try to verify?
Not like right out. Not like soon you like give it to me. Especially since if it's like super wrapped and it's not like open, like where I can just pull the top off and look inside. No. But if it's been there for some weeks and you haven't, I'm a little nosy. Maybe not even probably a few days, couple days. You know me.
Couple hours.
No.
Knowing you, couple hours.
Couple days.
A
day. I give it 24 hours.
And it was so good. And then she took the big box of sex toys and she went into the hallway, she opened up a closet, and she put it on the top shelf and then shut the door. Over the next couple of days, Mary expected Carmen to come back over and reclaim her box of sex toys. But Carmen didn't. And when days turned into weeks and then turned into months, and still Carmen had not come over to get the sex toys, Mary was kind of annoyed, but she was just too embarrassed to go over to Carmen and be like, hey, why don't you come over and get your sex toys? And so Mary just decided she would leave it alone and not talk about it. And if ever Carmen wanted them back, she could have them. But if she never asked for them again, Mary didn't care. She would just eventually throw the box away, and that would be it. A few months later, on September 29th, 2019, so we're talking about 6 months or so from when the sex toys were first brought over to Mary's house. Well, on this day, Mary was kind of doing chores in her house when she began to smell a really bad smell coming from the hallway closet where the box of sex toys were. And so Mary opened up the closet, and for sure, she could tell the bad smell was coming from this closet. And so she started by smelling the shoes that were towards the bottom of the closet to see if maybe she had stepped in something gross, but they were all clean. And then eventually she reached the sex toy box. She pulled it down from the top shelf, and it had never been opened. It's still wrapped, but she just smelled the box and she immediately recoiled because that had to be where the terrible smell was coming from. It was coming from this box. And so Mary was totally repulsed at the idea that these sex toys smell horrible, but she carried the box into the kitchen and set it down. And she thought, is this a horrible betrayal of my friend's trust if I open up this box and look at her sex toys? But Mary ultimately was like, you know what? Carmen has not come back for this thing. I'm opening this up because I need to know what's making this smell. So Mary went over and got a pair of scissors and she cut off the wrapping paper, and then she opened up the box, and inside was like this big thing that had been wrapped in tinfoil. So all you saw was tinfoil. And so Mary, she reached down and kind of began to peel back the tinfoil. It was kind of sticking to whatever was under it. But eventually, after she kind of yanked on it, she pulled the tinfoil off. And when she saw what was in there, she began screaming and ran outside and called the police. It would turn out Mary's neighbor, Carmen, who owned the box of sex toys, well, her boyfriend didn't just break up with her a couple of months before she brought the sex toys over. No, her boyfriend, who was a 67-year-old man named Jesus Baranda, he went missing around the time that supposedly Carmen and her boyfriend broke up. And so naturally, Jesus' family began looking for Jesus, and when they couldn't find him, they called the police. And eventually the police called Carmen and said, hey, you were dating Jesus around the time he went missing. We're going to need to come to your house and search it. And when Carmen heard that, she knew she had a big problem, because Carmen had murdered Jesus and cut his head off with a chainsaw, and she still had his head in her house. And so what did she do? Well, she boiled his head down, and then she put it in a box, wrapped it in tinfoil, and then she wrapped that box in wrapping paper, put a bow on it, and then went next door to Mary's house and said, hey, can you hold my sex toys for me? Because she knew Mary would likely not look in the box if it was sex toys. And so Mary took the box, put it in her closet, and then of course, the smell began several months later, and she would discover Jesus' head. Carmen was convicted of murdering her boyfriend.
Carmen, why the fuck you ain't never come back and get the box?
That ain't even a question.
That is the question.
Well, that too.
Because you ain't allow me to elaborate the reason why I asked
go
you.
ahead.
But
Go
no,
ahead.
you go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Say what you gotta say. Because I know you're forgetful. So go ahead.
I'm not forgetful. Go ahead.
You are.
I mean, I
very
am, but
forgetful.
I'm just
Go ahead,
wondering, what you do with the rest of his body? That's the only question I had. That's why I knew I wasn't going to forget it.
She could have been disposed of that because she been murdered
why,
him for a while.
Okay, another question. Why would you keep his head?
That was keepsake.
That's weird.
She was that angry. She was keepsake. The reason why I said, why would you not come get the
Because it's going to
head?
eventually.
No, you could have came back and destroyed it. You could have came back a week, 2 weeks later. But I'm gonna tell you the reason why she didn't go back and get the sex toys. She was in fear that Mary already had looked in the box. That's the reason why she never went back.
First of all, it's weird off rip. Say, for instance, someone comes to my, like a friend, hey, like, I want to still help you, but why would you bring me, like, why are you embarrassed about your sex toys in your house? Put them away. If you having other, like, people over a company, they shouldn't even be going through your stuff anyway. You can put that away in the corner, in the box, in the top of the closet where
different cultures. Different cultures.
But anyway, that's...
Different cultures, different things, different mindsets. So
I mean, cool, whatever, but... Yeah, anyway, it's still, everything's
the biggest
weird.
question at the end of the day, from April to September, you never went back and got that motherfucking head. What is wrong with you? You thought it was just gonna go away?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like,
cause you could have went over there and got that box a month later. Say, hey, Mary, did you ever look in the box? No.
Right.
And then you could have, I need it back. Would have got it back, disposed of it. They ain't looking at you no more. You could have been gone. How to Get Away with Murder. Good show if you ain't checked it out before.
Well, see, I guess I don't think. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that's how I think.
No. I get it, but I guess sometimes I don't go to that measure because I'm like, I want you to be called. Like, I want you to be held responsible.
All these crime shows you see, like, come on now. We all go there in the head, like, How to Get Away with Murder, bro. Like,
I feel you.
We done watched several crime shows.
Yeah,
like, okay.
It's dumb. The house.
She should have went and got the box. She should have went and got it.
He was sentenced to 15 years in prison.
15?
Police were never able to locate the rest of Jesus. All they had was his head. But there's a running theory that Carmen may have used the rest of her boyfriend's body and ground it up and then baked him into her croquettes that she gave out to people like Mary and other people in her neighborhood. But that's just a theory.
Child.
Now, you know how many people who have done shit like that?
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
I believe it, though.
Because you come bringing me a head and you come bringing me...
Y'all done ate the motherfucking body.
That's the best way to get rid of it.
And she boiled the head, so why not cook the rest of the body?
That's why I'm like, what did she do with the rest of the body?
Wow, she fed the... I believe that.
She fed the community, baby.
I believe that. I believe she fed them motherfuckers.
That's what my brain going with.
Because
we've heard it before.
We heard several times. Like... I ain't gonna hold you. I thought Jeffrey Dahmer was the only one. But after looking at you, they got a Jeffrey Dahmer in the UK that happened before. He happened before Jeffrey.
I don't put no past
and
nobody.
then the girl in Australia, she cooked this whole body and was trying to feed
it to
his family. And then a couple it's a
we hear a lot. That's crazy.
They do be feeding people. You be like, yeah, I got some fresh meat for the cookout. You be like, okay. You be like, this show
Yeah,
tastes.
folks eat,
This
like-
tastes different. That's that expensive shit. You can't eat everybody cooking, bro.
What you said?
You can't even.
What
You can't even
said,
eat family
child?
cooking. That's why neighbors bring you. Okay, thank you, neighbor. Try it.
Trash.
Try it. I don't know what you did with it, but I ain't come. Especially if I ain't never been in your house. Trash. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. That's what you gotta do, bro.
On the evening of June 24th, 1986, a 10-year-old boy named Juan Pedro Martinez Gomez bounced around in his seat and smashed his toy cars together in the cab of his father's big red tractor-trailer truck. Juan was so excited he could barely sit still. He always wanted to go for a ride in his dad's big truck. His dad was a long-haul trucker, but his dad always said no. But Juan had just gotten his best report card ever, and so as a reward for doing so well in school, Juan's father had surprised Juan and Juan's mom with this particular trip. Their plan was to drive from their hometown in southeastern Spain all the way across the country to the northern coast. And then once they got there, Juan's dad would offload the cargo that he had driven there. Juan and his mom and dad would stick around and kind of make a vacation out of it, going to the beaches and checking out the beautiful pastures where all the cows would graze. I mean, Juan was super excited. Juan's dad pulled the truck into this big lot with all these other trucks around, and then Juan's dad turned around and began backing the truck up so it could be paired up with the cargo he'd be hauling to the north coast. It was this huge 25,000-liter tanker that was covered in all these stickers and warning labels, and, Juan's father didn't know what this tanker actually contained, but he could tell, whatever it was pretty dangerous and also very important. And so as Juan's dad is backing up skillfully to line up with this tanker, Juan is just sitting in the back seat, absolutely transfixed at how cool his dad is. I mean, this is like the most amazing thing Juan had ever seen. And so finally, Juan's dad successfully hitched the truck to the tanker. And so once they were all hooked up, Juan's father yelled out the window and said bye to the people he worked with. And then Juan's father put in Juan's favorite tape cassette into the stereo and turned the music up. And then he turned onto the road and began making his way toward the highway. Juan's dad would drive basically all night, and Juan and his mother would basically sleep all night. But they would wake up at about 5 a.m. when Juan's father pulled into the parking lot of a diner that was located just north of the city of Madrid, Spain. They were making great time, so Juan's father told his family they could take their time eating. When the family did finish their meals, they got up and began walking out towards the truck, and little Juan, he turned around and he waved to the waitresses, and they all waved back. And then the family climbed back into Juan's father's truck, and then before long, Juan was curled up in the back seat trying to fall asleep again as his father merged onto the highway and began heading towards the stretch of mountain road called the Somosierra Mountain Pass. About 40 minutes later, a man who was also driving in the Somosierra Mountain Pass was just driving along when suddenly a huge red tractor-trailer truck came barreling toward him from behind, shining their lights into his car. And so this man, he sees this truck approaching so quickly, and he tried to get out.
He said 40 minutes, 40.
Mm-hmm.
Unless he pushing for time.
But
I don't, because I know sometimes truckers.
Yeah,
I know
so I don't
now.
know. Yeah.
But this back then. But I don't know. I know now they be pushed on a certain time frame. They have to get there before it's a cutoff time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you ain't gonna be doing that with your wife and your son.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could be wrong.
But there was nowhere to go, and the truck wasn't stopping. It was honking its horn, and the truck smashed into this guy, which sent his car careening off the road, but luckily it did not tumble all the way down the mountain. And so this guy's car comes to a stop on the side of the road, and the guy, he kind of comes to, and he feels himself. He's worried he's got a serious injury. He did find a little blood on his head, but overall, he felt he was okay. And then he managed to get his door open, and he climbed out of his car, and he looked a little ways down the road, and there was the truck that had hit him. It was now on its side, and it was hissing steam, and it didn't look like anybody inside the truck was trying to get out. Now, even though this guy was pretty shaken up from the crash he had just gotten into, he felt like he was definitely in better shape than whoever was in this truck, and so he decided he would just go up there and try to help them. But after only taking a few steps, this white van came blazing around the corner and came to a screeching stop on the road right next to where this guy was. And then before the guy could do anything, the sliding door to the van flung open and this woman with blonde hair jumped out and she ran over to him and she said, "I'm a nurse. Do you need any help?" And so this guy, he's looking at this woman and he's kind of sizing her up, and she did not seem like a nurse. And in fact, for some reason, this guy felt like she just made him really uncomfortable. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. And then he looked past this woman at the van and he saw the driver looked oddly similar to the woman, except it was a man who was driving, but he also had very bright blonde hair and he had these striking blue eyes that really stood out even from a distance. And then in the passenger seat of this van was this elderly woman who was just staring daggers at this guy who's now talking to this nurse who's right next to him. And so the guy's looking at the old woman, and the old woman's looking right back, and she really looked mean, like she was not happy to be talking to him. And so the guy finally just said to this woman who was claiming to be a nurse that, "You know what, I don't need any help. Go help them. They need help because they haven't gotten out of the truck yet." The woman just nodded, and then she ran back to the van, hopped inside, and the van sped, the 100 feet down the road to where the crashed big red tractor-trailer truck was. And again, the woman hopped out, and she rushed over to the truck, and she climbed on top of it, and she reached down, and she took something out of the truck. But from his perspective, 100 feet back, the guy who had also crashed, he couldn't tell what she had taken out of the cab. But after she took whatever she took, she climbed off the cab. She did not attempt to help anybody inside of the truck. She jumped back in the white van, and the white van sped off down the road, and they were gone. The guy barely had time to process what had just happened before he began to smell this unbelievably powerful rotten egg smell. When help arrived, emergency responders immediately realized they had an environmental disaster on their hands. The big red tractor-trailer truck, which was Juan's father's truck, was hauling 25,000 liters of sulfuric acid. And that rotten egg smell they were smelling in the area meant the air was now becoming toxic as the sulfuric acid leaked out and began interacting with the ground and making its way into the nearby river. So before anybody could even go inside of this truck to see if there were survivors, they had to basically cover it and the surrounding areas with hundreds and hundreds of pounds of sand and lime to try to counteract the acid. It would take hours to do this, and in that time, nobody came out of the truck's cab. And then finally, when emergency crews were able to go up to the truck and look inside, they discovered that the vehicle's occupants were all dead. However, there were only two bodies. It was Juan's mother and father. Juan was nowhere to be found. Now, one of the theories was, well, when this crashed, maybe the sulfuric acid landed on Juan's body somehow and literally dissolved him, and so that's why he was not found. But that's not possible because it would take much, much longer for sulfuric acid to totally eat away someone's body. And the body would have to be fully submerged in the acid the entire time. So that could not have happened. Rescuers would search the entire area deep into the woods in all directions, looking for signs of this child, but there were none. And when investigators attempted to recreate this accident to try to figure out what actually caused it and why it happened, what they would learn would only confuse them more. Juan's father's truck had nothing wrong with it mechanically, meaning the brakes weren't messed up, the accelerator wasn't messed up. There really was no reason why this truck should have crashed.
God, thinking about anything?
I was like, was the father maybe into like some... Because at first I was thinking, was the white van chasing, like following them, or was they after something? Because how would the woman know that it was a child in the back to even pull? Because I'm pretty sure that's what she pulled out, Juan, and took him.
Doesn't necessarily mean so.
It doesn't necessarily mean so, but where is he? And what did she pull out without even helping them? If you were a nurse, like, why wouldn't you try to, like, you pull something out? He's missing. So
this is what I'm thinking. Because is it 100% true that... Because it doesn't necessarily mean that they were running from... Because you said it was the white van chasing them. If I'm in a big rig, I'm not running from a van. I can drive slow. I don't have to be in a hurry because I'm in a big rig. You try to cut me off in that little van, I can roll you over. You get what I'm saying?
Okay, what do you think happened though? Or what do you think?
Because they're speeding, it's a possibility somebody had already took one. and they're trying to catch up with whoever took Juan. Maybe something happened. Because he's going fast, blowing a horn. They could have already, whoever took Juan, if Juan was killed, just the observation, hypothesis, or whatever you want to call it. Because you trying to get your ass out the way, because I got to go get my son. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I don't know. But I just, like, also, they kind of interacted with him to see what he knows. Mm-hmm. Or did he see anything with the guy that was crashed? Mm-hmm. You ain't trying to check on him. You trying to see if he's seen something, which he didn't see anything.
Wasn't messed up. There really was no reason why this truck should have crashed unless it was intentional. That's the only way this could have happened. Also, the truck contains something called a tachometer, which registers every time the truck slows down or stops. And when investigators looked at the record from this tachometer, they discovered that Juan's father had slowed down or stopped 12 different times between leaving the diner and crashing. But the route from the diner to the crash site was a straight shot with no traffic lights or stop signs. Basically, there had been no reason from the diner to the crash site to ever slow down or stop. But again, Juan's father did 12 separate times. And then also there were traces of heroin that were found in a hidden compartment in Juan's father's truck. Now, Juan's parents had no criminal record and absolutely no connection to drugs or the cartel, but investigators did consider a theory that, perhaps a drug cartel ambushed Juan and his family, and ultimately Juan was kidnapped. But there was one more really strange element to Juan's disappearance, and that was that white van that guy saw right after the crash. Multiple people in the area around the Soma Sierra Mountain Pass said they saw that exact white van because they all remembered the woman and the man who had that same really bright blonde hair. It just was something that was kind of unique and stood out. But the police tried to track down this van and the man and the woman and the elderly woman who was also claimed to have been seen inside the van, but no trace of that van was ever found. And also, police were never able to figure out what that woman actually took from inside of Juan's father's cab before they sped off and disappeared. Missing person posters of Juan went up all over Spain, and almost immediately loads of sightings were reported of Juan. But every time the police followed up on these sightings, they never panned out. Interpol, which is a major international police organization, called Juan's disappearance one of the strangest disappearances in all of Europe. 1 year after the crash, so in 1987, a driving instructor in Madrid, Spain, was filling out some paperwork in his office when he heard a knock on the door. When he answered the door, he found there was this elderly woman who appeared to be blind, and with her was a young boy who appeared to be about 11 years old. The driving instructor asked them, how can I help you? And he watched as the elderly woman turned and whispered something into the little boy's ear. And the driving instructor, he could hear her whispering, but he couldn't understand what she was saying. It sounded like a foreign language. And in fact, it would turn out they figured out she was speaking Farsi, which is the language spoken in Iran. The little boy listened to the elderly woman, and then after hearing what she had to say, he turned to the driving instructor and he asked in perfect Spanish, "Where's the U.S. Embassy?" The instructor gave them directions, and then the little boy nodded, and then he and the elderly woman, they turned around, they grabbed each other's hands, and they began walking away. And as they walked away, the driving instructor, he just couldn't help but feel like there was something oddly familiar about these two people. And so he flagged them down and he said, "Come back for a second." And so the boy and the woman, they came back, and the driving instructor, he asked the boy, he said, "Do you live in Spain? And if you do, how long have you lived here for?" And when he asked the boy this, the boy immediately looked really afraid and just didn't say anything and kind of just stepped back like this, like he wasn't going to answer. And then the elderly woman, she turned and she whispered something else into the boy's ear. And then after she was done talking, the boy kind of settled down and he looked at the driving instructor and he said, 6 months. And for some reason, at this exact moment, the driving instructor realized why this boy seemed so familiar. He remembered seeing him on all those missing person posters all over the place. And so the driving instructor, he couldn't remember the boy's name. And he goes, "Hold on a minute." He turns and he runs inside of his office and he finds one of the posters that said Juan Pedro Martinez Gomez. He grabbed it and he ran back out to show it to them and be like, "Hey, they're looking for you." But when the driving instructor came back to the front door, the boy and the blind old woman were gone. And so the driving instructor, he stepped out, he's looking around, he's yelling out for them. They were gone. Now, it's important to understand that to this day, no sightings of Juan have ever been confirmed, and that includes the driving instructor who claimed to have seen Juan.
Yeah.
But to this day, Juan's body has never been found.
Wow.
He's still missing, and his case is still unsolved.
Damn.
Wow.
I thought we was gonna get a conclusion, bro. I thought, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I really thought it was gonna be a conclusion to it.
The only with this one, I really don't know because I'm trying to figure out like one, if it was a straight shot from the diner to where the crash, like why were you stopping 12 times, like stopping and going, slowing down,
or was somebody cutting you off or anything?
That's what I'm saying. Like it was like a
Brace.
okay, the van, and you trying to like swerve them and pat, you know, like
True,
you know how it be like legit, like in the movies when it be like, you know, you trying to like get away from someone, and you don't want them to like what is it called? Collide or like trap you in or whatever, so you're trying to get away, you're trying to speed up or whatever the case may be. But then my other question is, since they have no criminal record, because that's what I was going, was the daddy maybe into something that the mother probably just didn't know, or did he get into something? Because how did the drugs get into
did he
like
say
the
in
compartment?
the beginning he had just bought that red truck?
No.
Did he say that?
I thought he said that he had it and the son always wanted to go, but he
Oh,
never would let him go.
yeah.
He never, but since he ain't got a good report card, he decided to, you know.
So it is a high chance possibility the dad was into something that he was.
Because I thought about that too, because I was like, normally you never let them like go anywhere, the wife or the son, but this particular time, you're like, we're about to go on this trip.
Did you know they were after you? You wanted some safety. Comfort. Maybe they want to attack me while I got my family.
You get what I'm
you
just never know.
And typically, we do know how they like to sometimes traffic drugs.
Mm-hmm.
They like to traffic drugs how?
Yeah.
By people who drive long
or
distance
did
trucks.
he not know anything about the drugs, period? And maybe someone stashed them in there and was like,
while
hey.
he was at the, what's it called?
Or even.
While he was at the...
who knows? Like, I'm just trying to think of, like, every possible, like...
There's a possibility they got one. Because, reason why I'm saying that, they would have noticed that they grabbed the boy out the car. And it's a possibility one would have died in the car crash, too. If the mom and dad dies, or he would have had bruises and stuff. Also, it's a possibility somebody would have saw an actual human being pulled out of the...
Yeah, true. But keep in mind, it was just the wrecked truck, the van with the 3 people in it, and the man that's far back that says that he could barely see. Really, he could see something, but he couldn't, like, fully make out what was going on. So there's no telling if, you know, they did, or she seen that he was, like, I don't know, because I don't know, like, the time in between them driving down to the truck, pulling something out, and hopping back in and, you know, leaving. Like, I don't know how long.
But reason why I'm saying other drivers would have said they saw. Other people were like, yeah, because you got to think about it on the highway. You got other people driving by, car crash. They would have saw that, hey, they pulled a body out. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't. But he said he saw something small.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been the drugs they were pulling.
It could have been the drugs.
Because he had a small trace of heroin in there. She just had to get the evidence out of there. I think they had already had one in the car with them. Could have. It was a van. He saw the driver, this woman, and
the man driving. And
I said the man driving,
and then
this woman, and I was trying to say the elderly woman. Doesn't mean that the boy wasn't in the back tied up or something out of sight. Or was it other vehicles on the road that's also involved? I'm saying that could have just been it could have been more than just their white van that was tracing, trying to catch up to one. Because if it stopped, like, I wonder, were they able to detect how long the truck stopped? But y'all was able to detect that it stopped multiple times, but were y'all able to detect how long it was stopped? You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was stopped long enough, that's long enough for somebody to get in and out. Is it just a slowdown, or is it a complete stop? Then the time period of just stopping. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying, but it's just I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm like trying to see if it fully makes sense because the only place that they were at was the diner. They left the diner, and then they're back on the road. So when was
it also don't make sense for you to stop 12 times while traveling.
Yeah, the only thing that would make sense is if someone was like after you or already following you and you peeped that and.
But you're not going to come to a complete stop or slow down 12 different times in that short of a.
Yeah, true. But I'm just trying to figure out if one was taken before the crash. Like, where you speeding up to go to? Why are you traveling so fast? Because they behind you. If your son in the car and you trying to go.
I said it could have been multiple vehicles involved. You didn't get.
Yeah, I heard you when you said that. I did hear you when you said that, but it's just.
But I'm not.
With this,
I'm not stuck on that being.
Yeah, I'm not stuck on it either, but. Yeah.
You have, but the thing is, you have absolutely no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea because normally when I like hear the stories, I kind of just go off of the information that's being given and I like implementing other things. But it could have been other vehicles or other people involved, and maybe could have.
Because typically with situations like this, when it's like drug cartels or even if it's like trafficking, they're not just sending one vehicle. They like to send multiple. So yeah, like how you know what I'm saying?
I mean, probably not one person, but I mean, it's a whole like.
It's just 3 people, but
3 people, a van.
And I wonder, is the blind woman now the woman that was staring at him?
The older woman.
The older woman that was staring at him.
Or is that just a coincidence that this old woman and this little boy walk in a year later? What was it, a year?
Yeah.
A year later.
But also maybe the reason why she was staring at him, and he was like, I was staring back at her because she was blind.
Yeah, she really wasn't even like.
She wasn't staring at you. She was just looking in your direction because she heard
the door open or voices.
The voices, and so she's looking in the direction of the voices. So, and he's dazed. He's out of it. You get what I'm saying? So, because if there's a small trace of blood on his head, it's a possibility of a concussion. Mm-hmm. He's not really realizing everything he's seeing. So but I just don't believe one dad and mom died and one didn't die. I don't believe one was in the car when the car crashed, in the truck when the truck crashed. I just don't believe he was in it. Or did she kill him off? Well, they would have said, like, it was something about, like, shooting wise, but they would have said that, you know, I'm going, like, with that, I'm going in the head in the movies, like, give me your shit. Pew, pew.
But, you know, just because the mom and the dad, you know, were taken by the crash doesn't mean that he necessarily would have as well.
Yeah, true.
Like, he could have, like, survived the crash. Depending on where he was at, like, within, like, was he, like, in the back of, like, the, you know, the truck, you know how the trucks are
the
with the cab. Yeah, was he, like, you know, like, it just probably depends. Or we don't have a body. He wasn't there. He wasn't discovered. So where is he? That's my only thing. I'm like, okay, where is he? If you feel like he did pass in the crash, they didn't have a body.
I do think he was kidnapped at the end of the day. It's the effect of when did the kidnapping happen that basically what we are lingering on is when did it
happen on the road at some point with the stops.
It happened during them 12. It happened during them 12.
Or did it happen sometime as they was leaving the diner?
Let's just say this. You believe that he was kidnapped after the crash. I believe he was kidnapped before the crash.
I don't believe he was kidnapped after or before.
It's either or.
No, I'm saying it's either or. I'm not stuck on him being kidnapped.
You kind of said.
I was at first. I'm not stuck on him being kidnapped like after the crash. But now that you said, you know, about the maybe before, there could have been other people involved. Yeah, I am stuck on it being after the crash. I'm going to just stick to that. You can stick to whatever, and I'll stick to... Because I'm just like...
But I do believe they spotted one, and the reason why, I think if he didn't go and set off an initiation that made the old lady sus, I think we would have probably got one. But whenever they did that, they went into hiding after that. Because now it's an alert. You know what I'm saying? Y'all knew we was asking about the U.S. Embassy. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then my only other thing, I'm like, why would y'all be after? Like,
I do believe one dad
I guess
probably was involved in some drugs.
Probably got involved in some stuff.
Extra money.
Yeah. And
he
one
typically
thing
drives
led to another
far,
or something. Yeah.
and so he could be able to help them traffic drugs, and possibly that one stop in between was a meetup thing, and something
went wrong or something happened.
Yeah.
Could have. Yeah. Or or he could have been kidnapped before.
But that just.
But then that won't make sense. Okay, I have to ponder.
Yeah.
If y'all have some, please let me know. I don't have enough time to really collect my thoughts.
But hey, man, y'all spend what's up in the comments, man. Let us know y'all thoughts about it in the comment section down below for us, man. But as always, I do go by the name DJ Nick. This is
here in the coast.
We are.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar, 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 dollar. Let me watch out for my power.